Hi guys, and welcome back to I Speak English. My name's Hayley, and in this lesson we're going to be taking a look at some Cambridge C1 Speaking Part 2 questions. What's going to happen is I'm going to give you a really simple structure to use as well as some useful phrases. That's going to kind of keep your speaking logical and ordered. And then I'm going to show you 5 example questions with 5 model answers as well, using the vocabulary and structure that I give you. So if you're struggling with part 2, by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly how to give a really high-level, well-structured part 2 response in speaking. So stay with me here if you need that. Before we take a look at it, please do make sure that you're subscribed to the channel and give this video a little like if you find it useful. It just helps it to get to more people so that they can prepare well for their Cambridge C1 exam as well. Right, let's get started. Alright, let's take a look at some of these speaking part 2 questions then. So if you're not aware, your speaking part 2 looks like this. Okay, so you're going to be given a piece of paper, if you're in the paper exam, you'll be given a piece of paper with 3 photographs on it, and there'll be 2 questions above those photos. Okay, so it looks like this. Okay, so you'll get 2 questions. For example, how difficult might these events be to organise? What might people find interesting about these events? And then you'll have to choose 2 of the photos to compare and contrast. Okay, it lasts about a minute. You have 1 minute to speak uninterrupted. Okay, so the other person in your exam will not speak during this. You just have to continuously talk for 1 minute, comparing and contrasting these photos. If we take a look at what the Cambridge Handbook for Teachers says, if you don't know what the Cambridge Handbook is, it's like a manual for the Cambridge C1 exam. I'll put a link to it in the description. It's absolutely free. You can download it from the Cambridge website and it's really useful. But this is what it says about your Speaking 2 exam. So candidates are given the opportunity to speak for 1 minute without interruption. Each candidate is asked to compare 2 colour photographs. Yes, you get 3, but you only need to compare 2. Okay, very important. Don't talk about 3, only talk about 2. They're asked to compare 2 colour photographs, not describe, compare, from a choice of 3, and to make a further comment about them in response to a task that is read out by the interlocutor. The interlocutor is like the examiner who is sat in front of you in the exam. They'll give you some instructions and then you can start speaking. A prompt is given to the candidates in the form of a direct question. This is written above the photographs. Candidates are expected to point out similarities and differences between the photographs and then move on to deal with the question, answering it with reference to both photographs. Okay. So you point out similarities and differences between what you can see very briefly, only a little bit of description, and then you deal with the questions. Okay. It also says, this also comes from the Cambridge Handbook for Teachers, candidates will always be asked to speculate about something which relates to the focus of the visuals. They will never be merely asked to describe the visuals. This is really important. It's a big mistake that I see with a lot of people that come to me for help for their Cambridge C1 exam. When students first come to me, they just start describing the photos. Start saying, okay, well, in this photo I can see. That's not what you should be doing. You should be comparing and contrasting the photos in terms of the question. I'll show you how to do that in a second if you're not sure. But very, very important, do not just describe the photos, because that's not what the task is asking you to do. Okay. Alright, so how do you pass them? What do you need to include? What do you not need to do? What shouldn't you do? Okay, first of all, as I already said, do not describe the photos. That's not what the question is asking you to do. Okay. Don't spend too long on photo 1. I see this a lot as well when students come to me for help. They kind of go on and on giving kind of reasons or descriptions for the first photo, and then they run out of time for the second photo or the second question. So be wary of how much time you're spending on that first photo. Okay, I'll show you how to get around that problem in a minute when we take a look at our structure. All right, speculate about the photo. Again, in the C1 Handbook for Teachers, it says that you have to speculate. Okay, so you're not... The main thing here is there's no right or wrong answer with this question. As long as you're not just describing what you can see, there is no right or wrong answer. It's about what you think might be happening, or, you know, what you think in terms of the question. Okay, so it's about your opinion, really, rather than what is right or wrong. So you need to speculate, okay? Oh, I guess this, well, I suppose this, I think this, okay? Use phrasal verbs, okay? I think I do have, yes I do. I have a video, I'll put it up here, phrasal verbs that you can use, really useful phrasal verbs for speaking part 2. I'll put that there, save it for later, so you can watch it. But any phrasal verbs you can use are really, really useful in speaking. You'll get higher points for vocabulary or language. And use linking words as well. Linking words are very important because they help your speech to kind of stay logical and ordered while you're speaking. Okay. So they're just a quick few tips on things to do, things not to do, to help you to pass. Next up, your structure. Okay, so this is usually what I tell my students to do, and they find that it makes this task a lot easier, and a lot... It's just kind of stops you from either running out of things to say, or it stops you from spending too long on one photo or one question. So what I would do is 5 steps, okay? First is just a very quick descriptive sentence to say what you can see in the photo. For example, in photo 1, it appears as if X is happening, while in photo 2, it looks like X is happening. That's it. That's as much description as you want. Because the examiners can see the photo, right? They can see what is happening in the photo. So you don't have to say, oh, there's a woman with blonde hair who is, I don't know, cooking pasta in the kitchen or whatever. They don't want that from you because that's very, very low level. That's B1 level. That's what they do in the B1 exam, not in the C1 exam. So super quick descriptive sentence about what you can see, and then straight away move to the questions. So go to your first photo and answer the first question for that photo. And then as soon as you've answered, immediately compare to the second photo. Same question, but just compare it to the second photo. And then change. Go to the second question, talk about the first photo, and then again immediately compare to the second photo. And that should take you 1 minute. You've only got 1 minute for this task. It's not a lot of time. So let's say you spend just over 10 seconds on each of these points. That's a minute, basically. You've got kind of 12 seconds per point, and then you're done. 1 minute is up. All right, grammar-wise, so modals are really important here in speaking part 2, mainly because when you can see the questions above the photos, they're normally asked with modal verbs. For example, what might people find interesting about these events? So examiners are expecting to hear you use this language. People might find this interesting. They could find this interesting. They may find this interesting, okay? So modal verbs, you can use might, could, or may with an infinitive verb if you're talking about the present, okay, like present simple. So they might like the atmosphere at the concert because XYZ, okay? If you want to use modals in continuous form, you would use might, could, or may with be and verb and ing. Okay, so they might be enjoying the atmosphere at the concert because XYZ. Or if you want to use it in past, okay, if your question, for example, is why might people have chosen to travel this way, you use might, could, or may, have, and a past participle. Okay, so they could have chosen to go hiking because XYZ. All right, so you need to use these because you have to speculate. Remember, in the handbook, it said candidates must speculate about the visuals, and these are what we call modals of speculation. Okay, so you're not saying they have chosen to go hiking because you don't know why they've chosen. You're kind of guessing. But instead of using the word maybe, which is another mistake I see people make, they're like, oh, well, maybe they chose this and maybe they did that, and don't stay away from maybe. Try to use might, could, or may, okay, with having a past participle. So they could have chosen, they might have chosen. You're guessing, you're speculating, which is what the task asks you to do. Okay, so modal verbs, very important for speaking part 2. If you do need more help with speaking part 2, and if you want all of this information written down that I'm giving you now, I put a link to a free ebook in the description. If you click there, you'll be able to see this ebook. It's got all the advice from this video. It's also got grammar and vocabulary in there. It's got the speaking structure that I've given you, and it's also got 10 exam questions in there as well for you to practice with. So click the link in the description there and you can download that for free, just for a bit of extra help. Okay, so something else you want to include is linking words. Very important again. They help your speech to stay kind of logical, and it just helps to connect your ideas together. So you can use any of these, whereas, however, on the other hand, to contrast, okay, you're giving a contrast from one idea to the next. You can use what's more or in addition to add an extra idea. Similarly or likewise, when you're comparing, if similarly is too difficult for you to say, it's actually a bit of a mouthful for me to say. I don't often use this similarly. Use likewise instead, because it's easier to pronounce and it means exactly the same thing. And first and foremost, secondly, again, just to order your speech. So when you use when you talk about your first point, say first and foremost. When you move on, say secondly. And then that way you kind of get higher marks for organization. Okay, remember you are scored from 1 to 5 on different marking criteria. You've got content. Have you answered the question correctly? You've got language, that's grammar and vocabulary, both your accuracy and range. You have organization, which is, are you using linking words? Is what you're saying ordered? Does it make sense? Okay. And communicative achievement. Are you able to express your ideas in a concise way that's easy for the listener to understand? Okay, if the examiner is confused while you're talking, you'll get a lower mark for communicative achievement. If everything you say is easy to understand, you'll get a higher mark for communicative achievement. Okay, so they're your marking criteria. 1 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. Okay. All right, so linking words, also very important. Modal verbs, linking words, very important. I'm not going to show you any phrasal verbs because I've got a video anyway on that, so you can take a look there. Now we're going to take a look at our questions and answers. So we're going to see 5 example questions, and I'm going to give you kind of high-level answers that you can try and kind of mimic using the structure that I give you and some useful phrases as well. Okay. All right, so this was the first one that we saw before. We'll take another look at this before we look at the answer. So, how difficult might these events be to organise, and what might people find interesting about these events? By the way, this is a real exam question. I got this from the C1 Handbook for Teachers. Okay, so it is a real exam question. So we've got a concert, a fashion show, and a tennis match. Okay. So remember, we need to choose 2 of these photos that we want to talk about. I'm going to talk about the fashion show and the concert. Okay. And this is an example of what I would say. So I've got my first descriptive sentence here, very short, just saying what is happening in both photos. Okay. So the first photo looks like people are at a fashion show, whereas the second photo must be a concert. Okay, that's it. That's all you have to say, descriptive-wise. Don't say, because I can see X, Y, and Z, and there's a woman in a dress, and blah, blah, blah. You don't need to do that. It's a waste of time, and, you know, you only have a minute. So if you waste 15, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, I've seen students waste just saying, I can see this, you're not going to get a very good score, because your content mark is going to be low, because you haven't answered the question, you've not speculated, you've spent too much time describing. Okay. All right, so super fast. Okay, the first photo looks like people are at a fashion show, whereas the second photo must be a concert. Then we move on to our first question. So I'd say the fashion show is probably more challenging to set up, because there could be a lot of things happening on stage and all the timings and outfit changes. Although I think the concert would still take a lot of organisation, it'd be simpler because there's only a certain number of people on the stage. So here we've answered the first question for both of the photos, okay? So we've answered for the fashion show here, and then we've changed and immediately compared to the concert. Okay, let's take a look at a bit of a look at the language here. So we've got I'd say. This is a nice synonym for I think. Okay, this is, again, another part of your speaking exam. The examiners are listening for like repetitive language, because your language mark is about the range of language you use. And if you're constantly repeating yourself, you'll get a lower mark. So to avoid saying I think over and over again, you need some synonyms or paraphrases like this. I'd say, I would say is an easy way to get a paraphrase for I think. Okay. So I'd say the fashion show is probably more challenging, so we've got a comparison. Make sure you're using comparisons. Again, the instructions for the task ask you to compare and contrast the photos. Okay, so you need to be using comparisons. It's more challenging to set up. Phrasal verb to set up. Any phrasal verbs you can use are always useful, because there could be a lot of things happening. Modal verb of speculation. Okay, make sure you're using these modal verbs. There could be a lot of things happening on stage. Okay, and then we've got, although I think the concert would still take a lot of organisation, it'd be simpler because there's only a certain number of people on stage. So here we've got what we call concession. Concession is quite a big grammar point at C1 that examiners expect to hear. If you don't know what it is or how to do it, I've got a video up here. Again, save it for later and you can watch it. It's basically when you compare or you contrast, you contrast a point from the main point you're making. Okay, so you're just contrasting 2 points in a sentence, basically. But examiners do expect to hear it. So if you can use concession, it's always useful. You always get points for it. So although I think the concert would still take a lot of organisation, it would be simpler, another comparison here, because there's only a certain number of people on stage. So that's for our first question. And then again, you immediately move on to question 2. To my mind, I reckon more people would enjoy a concert than a fashion show, because you can join in and sing along and the atmosphere is better. While at a fashion show, the audience is very passive and it's a bit too serious for me. Okay, so again, we've got synonyms for I think. To my mind, I reckon, those are synonyms for I think. Comparison, more people would do this than this. And then you give a reason why. And then we've got a couple of phrasal verbs to join in, to sing along. Okay, and then we've got another concession at the end here. While at a fashion show, the audience is very passive. Okay. All right, so there you go. There's an example answer for one question. So you can see it's not a ton of speech. Again, you've only got 1 minute. So brief description, very brief. Answer the first question for the first photo, switch to the second photo. and then move to your second question. Talk about the first photo and then compare again to the second photo. That's it. Okay, so try and have a practice with this structure and it should get a bit easier and a bit easier. If you're struggling to practice, if you can't find, speaking part 2 tasks very easily because there are a limited number online that you can't find, try and download this app if you can. If you've got a Google phone or an Android phone, this app's available there. It's really good. It's got hundreds, thousands of C1 speaking tasks, part 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then what you can do is, when you found a task that you want to complete, you practice it, you speak, and the app records you speaking, and then it basically gives you grammar and vocabulary corrections after you've spoken. So it's really good for seeing like repetitive errors and stuff like that you're making. It's really, really useful, this app. I suggest all my students to get it, just to get a bit of speaking practice in. So definitely download this and kind of have a play around with it. There's a free trial for it. And then if you like it and you find it useful, you can subscribe to it later. The link's in the description. I'll put the link there. So click that, download it, have a practice, see what you think of it, and hopefully it can help you just to get a bit of speaking practicing. All right, next one, let's take a look. So our next speaking part 2 task, we've got 3 photos here, and your questions are, what are some advantages of these jobs, and which challenges might these people face in their jobs? So we've got a police officer, we've got a doctor or a surgeon, and a politician or a president. Okay, so here, another important thing I should mention, try not to repeat the vocabulary from the task. I know it's hard because it's right in front of you, so you're kind of tempted to like just re-say the question when you're talking, but try not to use, for example, the word advantages or challenges here. Try to use synonyms again, because the examiners are listening for you to use paraphrases or synonyms. So we're going to need some synonyms here for advantage and challenge. All right, so let's take a look. I've chosen these 2 photos to compare and contrast, not describe. I've chosen the doctor and the politician here. So I'm going to say, the first photo appears to show a doctor or a surgeon helping a mother give birth, while I guess the second photo shows, there should be a S there, the second photo shows a president giving a speech. Okay, so again, really quick description of what you can see, and then move straight to the photo. So on the other slide, the question was, what are the advantages? I just spent about a minute telling you not to say the word advantages and to use a paraphrase, and I didn't take my own advice here when I was writing this. So don't do what I've done. Use a different word instead, okay? So in terms of benefits or something like that, in terms of pros, okay? Pros, benefits, anything like that. Try to avoid this word, okay? In terms of advantages, I think the doctor might have more. It must be really rewarding when you deliver a baby that's healthy and see the mum's reaction. Whereas for the president, I feel like no matter what you do, somebody will always complain, so it must be difficult in that aspect. Although a benefit for both could be that they get a high salary. Okay, so we've got a linking expression here in terms of, and then a noun. You could definitely steal that, try to use that just to kind of introduce the topic that you're talking about. Modal verbs, it must be. So I showed you could be, maybe, might be. Those are for when like you're 50% sure of something. We use must be when we're 100% sure of something. Okay, it must be really rewarding. I am 100% sure that this job is rewarding. Okay, so you can use must be, could be, might be, modals of speculation. Whereas, linking expression, linking word to link our ideas together. And we've also got although for a comparison as well. And we've got benefit instead of the word advantage, so I'm not repeating myself. And then we've got could be, another modal verb, although a benefit for both could be that they get a high salary. So that's answering our first question for both photos. And then second question, I'd say, so again, instead of saying I think, I'd say that both jobs are extremely challenging, collocation. While the surgeon might have situations of life and death, the president likewise has to make life and death decisions, but on a grander scale. Okay, so we've got likewise, another linking expression when we're comparing. Another modal verb here might have, okay? And we've got a collocation there. So again, you can see when you use kind of different synonyms, modal verbs, linking expressions, it just helps everything to stay clear and organised, and you're not repeating yourself as well. Okay. All right, number 3. This is our next one. So we're talking about travel here. This is our topic. So we've got why might people have chosen to travel this way, and how could these experiences broaden a person's perspective? We've got some people hiking there, some people on a beach, and like in a city with a map. All right, so let's see how I would answer this then. Let's have a look. So it looks like the ladies in the first photo are on a hike in the woods, whereas the group in the second photo appear to be a bit lost in a city somewhere. Kind of brief explanation, brief description of what you can see. Then we go straight to the first question. I suppose, instead of I think, I suppose the women have chosen to go hiking to maybe get some peace and quiet or escape city life. Perhaps they live in a big city and just wanted to get away from all the hustle and bustle, whereas in the other picture, they might have done the opposite. They might want to discover all the things the city has to offer, go sightseeing, soak up some culture. All right, so we've got I suppose instead of I think. Have chosen to go. So actually here it would be better to say they might have chosen to go or they could have chosen to go, and then you get your modal verb in. Okay. Peace and quiet, just a collocation there. We're using perhaps instead of might or could, just as a synonym. Get away, we've got a phrasal verb. Hustle and bustle, another nice collocation there, kind of idiomatic expression. Hustle and bustle is just like the kind of chaos of a city, really. Hustle and bustle, everything's moving around. People are running everywhere, there's a lot of movement in a city. Okay. So I've got hustle and bustle, whereas linking expression, might have done, another modal verb, might want, another modal verb, soak up some culture, phrasal verb here. If you soak up culture, it's like you're absorbing the culture, but also like enjoying it at the same time. Okay, so you soak up culture, you soak up history, okay, you soak up an atmosphere. It's quite a nice phrasal verb to use. So that's our answering our first question, and then our second question, I reckon, synonym for I think. I reckon that travelling in a city definitely broadens your mind because you get to experience things you've never done before. While I think that hiking helps you to quieten your mind, maybe you can reflect a bit more. So one thing you'll notice I've done here, and one thing I notice a lot of my students do, which I wouldn't necessarily advise against, but your speech gets a bit wordy when you do this and it gets a bit confusing between the photos. You'll notice I haven't really referenced the photos. I haven't said in photo 1, in photo 2. Like in photo 1, I think the women are da-da-da, or I reckon that in photo 1, this would broaden your mind because I've just kind of said what the situation is. So I've said, I reckon that travelling in a city broadens your mind, rather than in photo 2, it broadens your mind, okay? While I think hiking helps to quieten your mind. Again, I didn't say while the women in photo 1 might quieten their mind. So you don't have to always reference the photos, go back and forth, photo 1, photo 2, photo 1, photo 2. You can just say what's happening in the photo, hiking versus traveling in the city or something like that. Okay, next up. So we're talking about kind of education and learning. That's our topic for this one. So our questions are: why might people prefer to learn these things on their own, and what difficulties might they have? We've got a woman painting, a woman rock climbing, and a woman knitting. If that's a new word for you, knitting, what the woman is doing here, you spell it K-N-I-T-T-I-N-G. Okay, the K is silent. Knitting. K-N-I-T, to knit. Alright, let's take a look at how I would answer this then. So I've chosen the lady painting and the lady rock climbing. So again, short descriptive sentence. So in the first photo, it looks like a woman's painting something, whereas the second photo shows a woman rock climbing in a gym. Short and sweet, very concise, to the point. We move to our first question. I guess the lady might have chosen... Oh, sorry, I keep making mistakes here. Let me just change that, because we can't have that there, can we? I'm going to change this live on screen. Might have chosen. Dear me. Okay, we're back. That never happened. Ignore that. So I guess the lady might have chosen, modal verb, to learn painting on her own because it's easier to do at home. Perhaps she has watched some videos on YouTube to learn the technique and now she's practicing. In terms of the second photo, honestly, I'm not sure why anyone would learn rock climbing alone. It seems pretty dangerous to me. Maybe she was embarrassed or something. Okay, so we've got I guess to replace I think, might have chosen, modal verb. Comparison, it's easier to do. Okay, perhaps, instead of saying might again, we've got a synonym. Honestly, linking expression. It seems dangerous. Okay, rather than saying it is dangerous. We've got maybe to replace might or could. So that's our first question answered. Second question, talking about difficulties. So this is a nice linking expression here to bring in the next topic or the next question. Talking about X. Talking about difficulties. Rock climbing is way more challenging physically, and it can also be risky if you don't know what you're doing. She could get hurt if she's not careful. Whereas with the painting, I suppose if your painting doesn't look like you want it to, it can be frustrating. Okay. So again, nice linking expression to bring in the topic, talking about. We've got a comparison here, more challenging, but I've used a quantifier. It's way more challenging, okay? A lot more challenging. Risky, a different word for dangerous, because I use dangerous here. It's pretty dangerous, so I'm using a synonym, okay? And we've got whereas, another linking expression. Okay, so hopefully you're getting used to this structure now. You can see, again, brief description, go straight to the first question, first photo, second photo, go straight to the second question, first photo, second photo, and that's it. Right, I've got one more for you. One more example. We're talking about technology now, okay? So how do you think technology has impacted people's daily routines, and what might be some downsides to these technologies? Okay, let's take a look at these photos. We've got a guy using VR. We've got some kids using some laptops, and we've got a woman. She's got some headphones in here. So I'm guessing this is part of the technology thing. So let's have a look. How would I answer this? So I've chosen the guy with the VR headset and the kids at school. So descriptive sentence. In the first photo, it looks as if, that's a nice expression, looks as if something. Looks as if a guy is using a VR headset to exercise. Whereas in the second photo, a group of kids are typing. My God, the amount of mistakes in this. Sorry guys, I should have looked at this before I actually started filming, shouldn't I? But there we go. Try again. A group of kids are typing on laptops. They might be doing a group project or something. Okay, So we've got looks as if. You can steal that. That's a nice expression to use. And they might be doing, again, modal verb of speculation. So that's our introductory sentence. Moving on to our first question. Perhaps the VR game has helped this guy to be healthier. Maybe there isn't a gym close to his house, so he trains with VR instead. On the other hand, I guess working on a laptop is pretty common for most teenagers, so it might not have impacted them that much, but it would definitely make a project quicker to do. Okay, so we've got perhaps instead of maybe. We've got comparison, healthier, maybe instead of might. On the other hand, linking expression to contrast something. Pretty common. Okay, collocation there, kind of informal collocation. Might not have impacted modal verb of speculation in the past. So we've got all that grammar in there. Moving on to our second question. In terms of negatives, okay, so again, nice linking expression here in terms of, and then a noun. In terms of negatives, I would say that too much tech is bad for kids because it can become addictive, and they should minimize it in schools. Likewise, the VR could have a similar risk, but it might be worse because you could end up living in a virtual world. Okay, so we've got in terms of, nice linking expression. I would say instead of I think. Likewise, to make our comparison, could have modal verb. We've got a phrasal verb here to end up, which is like when a situation kind of finishes in a particular way or with a particular result. Right, so there you go. That's how you do speaking part 2. That's your structure. There's some useful phrases for you, useful grammar that you have to include, and you've got 5 example questions there that you can also work on. Again, download the app from the description and you can actually practice this and get corrections if you need it. If you found this video useful, I hope you did. If you did, please do give it a like. It really helps it to kind of reach more people and just lets me know that what I'm doing is helping you, so I can make more videos like this to help you a bit more. If you want me to make a video on something in particular, let me know in the comments. If you've got any questions about the C1 exam, let me know in the comments. And if you need any more help with the C1 exam, or if you'd like to take a lesson with me, go to www.englishclassesonline.co.uk and you can book a lesson with me straight from there. Right, so that's all from me for today. I'll see you in another class soon. Right, bye.